fun fact about me. Man, I am a planner, like a serious planner. Like when I make an itinerary, I factor in driving time and parking time type of planner. And anyone who plans knows that you decide early on what you will do and what you won't do. And maybe you're a planner like me, maybe you're not, but I think we can all agree that we've probably made some never statements in our life before. Those things we just said we will never do, the things that we said we won't do. Maybe some of those are like, I'll never go skydiving. I'll never leave my hometown. I'll never drive a minivan. I know there's definitely some guys that said that before they had kids. I'll never eat pineapple on pizza. And if that's you, I don't blame you. I'm right there with you. That's just weird. I don't get it. I'll never let my kids watch TV. My son was actually like for an hour and a half watching Spider-Man the other night. I was like, so I'm already failing on that one. Maybe you've said those exact statements. Maybe they've been a little bit different, but here are some statements I've said over the years. I'll never give a talk from stage. I'll never be a pastor. I'll never bowl a perfect game. Another little fun fact about me, I love to bowl, not just like casual Friday night bowling, like I take it really seriously. I'm in a league on Wednesday nights, and this past Wednesday, I actually shot my new high score. Not to toot my own horn, but I do have a picture of it. First of all, that's the face of pure defeat. If you look closely, I made it all the way to the 10th frame, and I choked. People. I am the opposite of clutch, so that's my disappointed face. But I've said that statement before, I'll never bowl a perfect game, but I'm close. I've also said I'll never be successful in college. I mean, that's one that definitely sticks out to me. I just remember giving that narrative to myself as early as high school. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky originally, and yes, that's how you have to say it, like your mouth is full of maple syrup. Louisville, Kentucky, not Louisville, not Louisville, Louisville. And I went to a high school called DuPont Manual, and it was a public school, but it was a magnet high school, which meant you have to apply to get in. And I was just surrounded by so many intelligent people. And I was a good student. I remember working hard throughout high school to get a good GPA, and I finished with a 3.3 GPA, but literally my classmates around me were getting 3.8s and 3.9s and 4.0s and 4.125. I'm not sure how you get above a 4.0, but they were doing it. And I'll never forget taking the ACT my junior year, and I got a 24 on the ACT, and I was like, it's not bad. I'm pretty happy with that score. And literally the classmates beside me, when they were looking at the results, they were in tears because they got a 32 instead of a perfect 36, and I'm looking at mine like, maybe I shouldn't be so happy about this 24. And I remember when it was time to apply for college scholarships, and most of my scholarships were in-state, which I'm super thankful for, but my classmates were getting scholarships to literally the best universities, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Purdue, Notre Dame. And I just remember telling myself, man, if you can't even compete with the people in high school, how are you going to be successful in college? And I just remember that thought stuck with me. I remember getting to college, and my friends around me knew exactly what they wanted to major in. I want to be pre-med so I can be an anesthesiologist. I want to be an elementary school teacher. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a social worker. And true millennial fashion, I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to be passionate about. I didn't know. And I just remember feeling stuck in that moment. And instead of turning to my friends that knew exactly what they wanted to do and said, how did you find your passion? I isolated myself. And instead of slowing down enough to realize what I was doing and how I was feeling, I just kept myself busy. I filled every hour of every day so I didn't have to think about where I was going to end up. But the reality was that I was stuck in that moment. And the unfortunate thing about making never statements is once you start to make them, you continue. And I made some more statements. Some of those were, I'll never live in northern Kentucky. I had every plan on going to college at NKU and moving back home. I'll never make enough money. I'll never be able to lose weight. Quick humble brag, I have recently lost 20 pounds, and it's hard work. Thank you. Working on it. And then I've been doing it for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was I was up here doing community life, telling you about the things that are happening around this place, and I was talking to this side of the room, and I look at the screen, and I'm like, oh, That's what I look like from the side. I need to do some work there. But that's a statement that I've said I'll never be able to lose weight. I've also said I'll never get married, and that's another one that just sticks out to me. I remember before college, as early back as middle school and high school, I just watched my parents have so many ups and downs in their marriage, and they were painful years. I just remember watching my mom and the pain that she felt, and my dad, and me being an only child and the pain that I experienced. And they are better than ever today. They're happier than I have ever seen them, but I can quickly put myself back in that moment, and I just remember that pain and the hard work that it took to reconcile their marriage. And I just remembering getting to college my first year, I just said, I'm never going to get married because the potential reward of a spouse is not worth the risk of feeling that pain, and I just don't want to do the hard work, so I'm not going to do it. And I just realized I just started dating just to date. I went from one relationship, one woman to the next, just trying to see what I could get out of each and every relationship. I wasn't looking to commit. I wasn't looking to settle down. I was just living life the way I planned it, the way I wanted, whatever would benefit me most. And I just realized because I said that never statement, I spoke something in my life into existence that I believed. And again, instead of going to my friends and saying, hey, how are you having a successful relationship in college? Instead of slowing down again enough to realize what I was doing and what I was thinking and what I was feeling, I did the opposite. I just stayed busy so I didn't have to think about it. And with each of those situations and so many more in my life, I had what I thought was a good plan. Like I said, I like to plan, and I thought it would just be easier to isolate myself from my friend group. I thought it would be easier to just keep busy so I didn't have to think about it. Yet those situations weren't turning out like I thought they would. And in the midst of feeling stuck in those situations and scared in those situations, what I love about moms is that you all have impeccable timing. And from time to time, my mom would send me morning devotionals just to get my day started on a good note. And I just remember feeling stuck in both of those situations, and my mom sent me a devotional that had the verse Jeremiah 29:11. And it says this: "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." And I had heard that verse before growing up. I had read it quite a few times, but something about being in the midst of those situations, it hit me differently, and I just read it over and over and over. And I feel like in that moment, God revealed to me that there were so many decisions that I was making, both big and small, that I didn't invite God into. The majors I chose versus the majors I didn't even choose to try. The women I dated versus the women I didn't date. The internships that I accepted versus the ones I rejected. The friendships that I chose versus the people I chose not to pursue friendships with. All of those things, I was living the life the way I wanted, the way I planned it, what would benefit me most. But it wasn't working. So I started to take a long look at the times that I had said never up until that point in my life. And I realized that I unintentionally pushed God and his power out of my life and my decision making. And he kept revealing to me that, Malcolm, I desperately want you to invite me into every aspect of your life because I care about it. I care about all of the decisions that you're making, big and small. And I already have plans for you because it says it right there in that verse. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And I just realized I needed to invite him in to see those plans. So that's what I did. I made the conscious choice at that moment to invite him in to see those plans. And for me, I did 3 specific things. And the first one was slowing down. I had to slow down. If I was going to invite God into anything, I had to slow down enough to give myself some space and some margin, some time to think, some time to relax. And for me, I had to actually do something that was pretty hard to do in college. I started to go to bed earlier, first of all. I started to wake up earlier. And like I said, I'm a planner, so I would look at my schedule for the day and where I had natural breaks. And instead of filling that time just to fill it, I was proactive with that time. I started to actually schedule some time to have some fun. And there's this bowling alley right next to NKU's campus called LaRue Lanes, and I would go there before work, sometimes in between classes, and have some fun. That's fun for me. It might not be fun for you, but it was fun for me. And sometimes I actually scheduled some rest to where I just don't have an agenda, where I'm just hanging out, relaxing, nothing's on my mind, to where I can just think. And sometimes I scheduled some solitude time, some quiet time. And instead of putting on an audiobook in the car on the way to work, instead of listening to music in my headphones in between classes, I chose to just be silent in those moments. And I would honestly have an external third-person conversation with myself. People probably thought I was crazy, but in those silent moments, I would say, Malcolm, how's your day going? If it's great, why? If it's kind of sucky, why? And what have you done or not done to cause that outcome? And I began to actually process my emotions, what I was doing and how I was feeling. And once I slowed down, I was actually able to do the second thing, and that's praying. And you're like, of course, Malcolm, we're in church, you're going to tell us to pray, that's obvious. But I realized if I wanted to know the plans that God had for me, I had to invite him in, I had to ask. If I wasn't slowing down, I didn't have any margin to do that, especially consistently. So once I slowed down and had some margin, and I devoted some of that margin to talk to God, he started talking to me back. And he revealed to me that he cares about not only the big life-altering decisions that I'm making, but the everyday small choices as well. So as I started talking to him and praying regularly, I started asking him one simple question. God, what direction do you want me to go? What direction do you want me to go? Because I realized up until that point, I was, again, living my life the way I planned it, the direction that I wanted it to go, and it wasn't working. I was stuck in those situations. So I started surrendering those things, and I said, God, I just want to go the direction that you want me to go. And he revealed to me that, all right, I'm going to start leading you places, but you may not be able to see the whole plan. But I started to realize if I'm always going the direction that God wants me to go, I don't have to worry about if I'm doing the right thing or not. And I don't have to see the whole plan, but as long as I'm being obedient to that, I know God is going to see me through that situation. And as I started to slow down, make some margin, as I took some of that margin and devoted it to asking God, what direction do you want me to go, I started doing the third thing. And that third thing was being in community and not isolating myself. Because again, I thought it would just be easier so I didn't have to hear the advice or suggestions of other people, but I realized that I needed people around me that I trust, specifically that I trust. And it wasn't just about having fun all the time. Those people spoke truth in my life. And sometimes they were difficult conversations. They told me when I needed to take out the trash, when there was areas in my life that stunk and that I needed to remove it. And those were difficult conversations, but conversations I needed to hear in the time. And because they were pursuing Jesus much better than I was in that moment, they felt the authority that God has given them to speak the same truth that Jesus would speak into me. And that was such good truth that I needed to hear in those moments. And once I started doing those three things collectively, because I truly believe it takes all three of those things, once I started to slow down and have some space, have some margin, once I started devoting some of that to praying to God and asking him, what direction do you want me to go? And once I started being in community with people that I trust, God showed up and he moved and he drastically changed those situations. That cycle of dating that I was in, dating just a date that didn't have any purpose or meaning, once I started doing that, once I started doing those three things, I started to slow down and I started to play that why game with myself. Malcolm, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to these other women? And what about you makes you think that divorce is some type of generational curse? You have the ability to break that in your family. That doesn't have to be your story. And once I started praying to God, I said, God, help me lower my walls. Help me be vulnerable. Help me realize that I have the ability to control how my dating relationships go. And God, if you have a woman specifically for me, put her in front of me so I can see her. Lead me directly to her. And once I invited that community around me, they spoke some truth in my life. They said, if you want a godly woman, you first have to be a godly man. And there's some trash in your life that you need to remove to attract a godly woman. And once I did those three things, I never thought in my sophomore year of college I would meet a godly woman that likes 2000s R&B and Pizza Hut pizza as much as I do, but I found that in my wife, Erin. we'll be celebrating 4 years of marriage this September. And that's something thank you. And that's something I never thought I would do. And here I am married with a family because God moved in that situation. I truly believe if I didn't do those 3 things, I would not have met her. And in regards to feeling like I wouldn't be passionate about anything, like I wouldn't be successful in college, I did the same thing. I was in the midst of finishing up my undergrad. I actually finished it, and I was working on my MBA because I went straight through school because I had no idea what I was going to do. And I remember applying for jobs, and the ones that I wanted, I got rejected from. The ones that I didn't really care about were, of course, the ones that they asked me to interview for. And I just remember slowing down again and saying, first of all, Malcolm, why are you looking at other people for recognition? Why is your identity wrapped up in how much you compete with other people or how successful you are compared to other people? And I remember asking God, again, this is not working. So I'm slowing down and I'm asking you, what direction do you want me to go? And if there's a specific job that you have for me, please put it in front of me so I can see it. And again, I invited those people that I trust around me. And I said, hey, can you say that same prayer on my behalf? And when I did those 3 things, again, God moved in that situation. And literally 2 days after I prayed that prayer, I got a call to come on staff here 3 years ago. And I had no production experience, but they called me and asked if I would lead the experience team because I believe God said, hey, if you're asking me what direction you want me to go, you have to be obedient and go there. So I took a leap of faith and I came here, and I feel like God touched someone else's heart to say, take a risk on that guy because he's being obedient to the direction I'm calling him to. My life is so much more fruitful because of this place. And if I'm being transparent, this right now is something I said I would never do. Give a talk on stage at a church as a pastor, and that's a never statement that I've made since I've been on staff here. Because it's a daunting task, thinking about having to pastor and lead 1,800 adults that come here on the weekend. But not only that, Malcolm, now it's not just a campus pastor, now you're a community pastor. So do that same thing, but for all of Florence and Northern Kentucky. It's a daunting task. And thinking about how to make sure that this humongous building stays afloat and is running smoothly. I didn't feel like I was qualified to do that. But God's like, I'm calling you. I will qualify the called. I'm not calling the qualified, and I'm asking you to be obedient and step into this. So are you going to? So I just remember, again, slowing down and saying, Malcolm, why are you running from this pastoring gift that people are calling out on you? And I remember just praying and saying, God, you know how I feel about this, but if you're calling me to do it, I want to be obedient, so make it clear. And I asked those people around me, those people that I trust, to say that same prayer on my behalf. And it led me to this very moment. And no matter how good of a planner I am, and I think I'm a good planner, but no matter how good of a planner I am, my vision is limited. And God can't show up and God can't move if I don't let him, especially when I make never statements. But when I choose to invite God in by doing those 3 things, by slowing down, by praying, and by being in community with people that I trust, he leads me and he guides me and he directs me into places I could never go on my own. And folks, that's why I'll never say never again, because it's too important not to. It's too important not to. And these 3 things that I'm sharing, the slowing down, the praying, and the being in community, those are basics. They're simple things. But man, some of the simplest things are the ones that we forget about as soon as life gets difficult and life gets chaotic. But I truly believe if you stop saying never and you invite God into your decision-making, both big and small, it's both big and small things, God will move in your life and he'll move in ways you would never expect. For God knows the plans he has for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Thanks.